Are you a recovering people pleaser? Do you feel like every single time that you write your manifestation list that there are so many moving parts and everyone couldn't possibly be happy with it, and then you look back at that list in the future and you go, none of those things actually happened. What am I doing wrong? How am I fucking this up? I don't understand. I'm following all the traditional advice and I don't know what's going wrong. This episode is made for you. Hi, it's Angharad Sage and you are listening to the Your Galactic Guide podcast. And guess what, bitches? We are back here for season 4, okay? But it's the Christmas portal, the holiday portal, pre the New Year portal 2025. So this podcast is going to be perfect for you to listen to when you are wanting to elevate your manifestation practice, and you are also wanting to move through and move past the blocks and the difficulties that you have experienced in the past with your manifestation list. And let me fucking tell you, this is not just for beginners. No, what I'm going to share with you is something that my guide shared with me quite literally this fucking year. And it changed so much for me. And I would say in the mastery realm of manifestation as a manifester, but not just as a manifester, just in general with the manifestation game. It's something that I was actually 2017, I think I first heard of the word manifestation. I was like, oh, what is that sparkly shiny thing? That's amazing. Give me a bit of that, honey. And hello, my brand ended up being a lot about manifestation, to be quite fucking honest. But anyone who has been in this realm for a really long time will also find a fuckload of value out of this. And I also guarantee that nobody has ever talked about this before in this context and is not going to share this technology, because this is my specific codex. This is my specific technology. And I love how it all blends together. And be prepared for a mind fuck. Be prepared to be extremely activated, and be prepared for 2025 to bring you fucking everything that you desire and everything that you thought you could never have before because of what I'm going to share with you. So buckle up, bitches. You better be fucking ready. Let's fucking go. Before we get into that, I just need to tell you how professional I feel. I'm sitting here with like a full-scale condenser microphone with not a USB-C, a fucking hardcore out, I don't even know, and a pop filter and all this kind of shit. And I feel so fancy, like so fucking fancy. I'm just really excited. I shared inside my Instagram. You know, you have channels on Instagram. The channel is now called Innovations and Activations. And I shared in there a photo of the setup. It's really interesting because sitting here, I have this activation within me, and I am a bit afraid to share some of these topics that I want to share. And it reminds me of when I was actually recording my first few episodes for this podcast in November 2018, which was, I just pulled out my calculator. That was 6 years ago, because I didn't believe it when I counted up my fingers. What in the flying fuck? So happy 6-year anniversary to this podcast. And I was super scared to share these things, and I always know I'm on my cutting edge of my technology and of my leadership when they are contexts and stories and technologies that I'm really afraid of sharing. And so my little human is having a little fucking freak out, but we are here, and I'm starting with this episode because I guess it's probably the most familiar topic of all of them, of like the ones that I've written out so far, but it is in a way, the format of this is going to be the part that's the most frightening for me, is I'm actually bringing in some of my science background. So for those of you who don't know, I've always been a bit of a science bitch. I've not been formally trained in a science realm. Oh, well, no, I guess technically I kind of am, because I'm doing a computer science stuff with Harvard at the moment, an AI study. So I'm not currently, but whatever. My formal studies been in accounting and agribusiness and business, not in science. But I was a science bitch and did a whole lot of extended science stuff at high school, and began a science degree when I left school. I left college for Americans. Went to university for a science degree. Anyway, that didn't end up being my path. However, it's something that I'm very interested in, and my son, who is 10 years old, soon to be 11, has always had an aptitude for science and space and astrophysics and physics, and like was asking questions about gravity at age 5. So our natural passion for physics and science has grown in our family, and I believe that we need more scientists in this world, because in my perspective is that I think the world needs more scientists, because from my perspective, science is all about gathering data, or rather taking an estimated guess, right, as to what you think might happen, gathering data, and then creating a conclusion based on the data that you had at that point, with the data size and with the test that you ran, knowing that there are a million variables and a million different things that you can't control, even though you have controls, right? And it's all about honoring the answers and the conclusions from that specific test that you got, knowing that if you then go and repeat that exact same test with a different data sample, so different people or different environments, whatever the thing is, then you're going to get a different conclusion. And I've always really loved science because it I guess it sat well with my brain and with my soul that is embedded in this human body, in this meat suit, this soul from another planet, right? It really sat well with me based on knowing that this life is an experiment and that there are a million moving pieces. And I believe that our journey on this planet, and the whole reason why we are here, or one of the reasons why we're here, a major truth of the reason why we're here, is actually for relationships, and is actually for experiencing duality and experiencing this 3D world. And within that, we are collecting data for our own purposes and for also the higher consciousness and evolution of us as a whole as well. So I haven't shared any of that or this technology that my guides shared with me around manifestation. The thing I want to firstly go into and honor is that a lot of you listening, I would say probably every single person listening, based on the caveat I put at the beginning of this podcast, has resonated with either being a people pleaser or is a recovering people pleaser or is still struggling with being a people pleaser. Now, when it comes to our human design or our CODEX, which I haven't even introduced CODEX on this podcast before, but when I say CODEX, for me, CODEX is a representation of a technology that I have been using for a lot of years with myself first and then with my clients, which is your human design. Everybody's human design is super, super individual. A manifestor to manifestor are super different. Different gates, different profiles. There are a million moving pieces within human design. And so when I'm working with clients, it is their individual human design. But after working with hundreds of clients, like in a one-on-one capacity where I've spoken to them over the years, I have also realized that even though someone may be a 2-4 emotional authority, manifesting generator with a defined this and undefined that, they still present and their life is super different. A primary example, in fact, actually is I have a human design twin, which if you're listening, you know who you fucking are. I have a human design twin who is from the UK, and we were born on different dates, but it was actually within moments of one another because we were different time zones. Same year, everything. So we have an identical human design chart, an identical astrology chart, and she's a client of mine, which I met a few years ago. And the life that she lives and the life that I live are so different. The desires that she has and the desires that I have are so different. And we know that based on conditioning in our families, like 2 twins, right, for instance, in human design will actually be different. However, the part that I learnt over time and the piece that came into my technology was actually around, so there's individual human design, but then the other major parts are people's desires, their lifestyle, and their vocation. Now, desires are based on our authority anyway, but I think that it is really important, being that, for instance, I am a homeschooling mother and a CEO and a wife and have undone a lot of religious, cultish kind of trauma within our relationship. And I desire to spend a lot of time with my family. And that is not necessarily a typical manifestor precipitation. And that's okay that that's unique. That's okay. That's my desire. And so putting everyone in a box of being a manifestor or being I'm a 2 line as well, right? Like introverted. everyone's version of that is going to precipitate very differently. And so the desires are super fucking important, coupled with lifestyle. Like the advice that I would give, or the technology, the channeling that would come through for a manifesting generator client versus a generator client who are both in corporate worlds, but then one of them maybe has children, one of them doesn't, will be entirely fucking different. So it was a really important part of my frequency and of my impact and of my technology. And the third piece, vocation, one of the things that I believe actually, and I have seen time and time again to be super successful with the high level entrepreneurs that I am working with in a one-on-one capacity, is actually a separation between our vocation and our work, which is super against the grain and not at all what we are taught in the kind of, I don't just want to say online coaching world, but like expression of our soul's work, if that kind of makes sense. And one of the reasons I believe that it needs to be separate is because we need to have something just for ourselves that doesn't have to be, or rather some untanglement on the journey. Some people are called, not everyone is going to be, but I believe that one of our higher timelines is to pull apart our vocation and our work, because as we become really high performing, if everything is tied up in our work, that actually creates more issues for us at a certain level, and once we elevate past a certain level. And if you are at that stage, you're already, there's probably already lights going off in your brain. And if you're not there yet, then it might just be expanding you a bit. But for me, in my experience and with the clients that I've worked with, it seems to be like a level thing or an elevation thing, or a certain part in our career where that serves us. But that may not serve us in the beginning. For instance, like running ads for your business. For some people, that might work to do that in the very beginning. But for most people, it's probably better once you've got a product suite and a funnel and, you know, a team who can run the ads and all the kind of shit. So, you know, and you've nailed your copy and you've nailed your graphics and you know what's working and you've got all the sample size, It's kind of one of those things. So, anywho, that's the work that I do within CODEX. And that is what I mean when I share, or when I mention, or when I reference CODEX. From here on out, I have provided the caveat and the description for what CODEX means to me and what CODEX means within the context of my technology. So when it comes to people pleasing and your CODEX, aka the specific part within your CODEX, in this instance, I mean your human design and people pleasing, there's a few different places that this comes in. Typically, it actually comes in where our non-definition is in our human design charts, because we are receiving information from the world there and we're amplifying it by 200%. And when that happens, that feels like, the best way I can describe it is like a system overload. It's like installing Mac software onto a PC computer and the computer's screaming, do not compute, and the app literally won't work because it's the wrong software on the computer. And so when it comes to people pleasing, because this feels so unpleasant to us, especially for those of us who have a lot of undefined centers. So undefined centers, if you are newish to human design, is where your centers are white. If you haven't even got your human design chart, we will drop a link in the show notes for you to go and find yours just for free, and it'll tell you what your energy type is. And if you look on there for where the little shapes are colored in, that is where you're defined, and where it's not colored in, that is where you're undefined. So basically where you're undefined, because this is super uncomfortable for us and it feels like a system overload, these are the areas in which we can find ourselves being conditioned or forced into, or us choosing to people please, to try and diminish that pain, to try and make it less intense, to try and make it go away, or to try and cope with the pain or the discomfort. So there's a couple of places that I immediately look to in this area. The first one would actually be the solar plexus, the emotional authority, or the emotional center. And the second place is actually identity center. And so, and heart, I mean, all of them, all of them. And my intention is to not talk about human design for fucking 45 minutes before I get to the piece that I want to share with you. So when it comes to our human design and your CODEX, it can be pretty fucking simple for us to just become people pleasers instead of actually go with what we desire and go with our leadership and go and really listen to our authority, or even be in tune with it enough to actually then be bold to then act. Because the thing is, at every single level, like I was just sharing earlier on, at every single level, when we act in a way that our authority is calling us to, it is always scary. Because everything that we desire is on the other side of our comfort zone. Everything that our authority is telling us to do or sharing with us to do or nudging us into do, our soul, our energetic DNA is showing us into higher timelines. Every single one of those things is on the other side of our comfort zone, and therefore we're going to freak the fuck out. And our human is going to be like, oh no, we couldn't possibly do that, darling. We might fucking die. And so what you might find yourself doing that is absolutely cock-blocking your manifestations for a reason that I will share in a moment is you try and get other people on board with what you want. Maybe that is through lightly dropping hints about you wanting to go to Paris for a holiday, or go on a cruise, on the Disney cruise, or go to Disneyland, or buy a different car, or move different countries, or I don't know, have an open relationship, whatever the fuck it might be. You might either subtly drop hints, you might try and convince the other people in your life, or your partner, for instance, right, that, maybe this would be something to try, or maybe you just go after their manifestations and the thing that they desire instead of your own. And a lot of this is actually just a shadow of you being a people pleaser. If you find yourself, like if you actually sit there and ask yourself, what do I actually truly want? And if you sat with that, and if immediately you are filtering it through the people that are around you, the significant people, or the less significant characters around you, if you are thinking about them in any way, shape, or form, this is a people-pleasing tendency. This is not just a protective mama bear thing. There is more going on the surface than just this. And one of the reasons why this is a giant fuck up is because of something in physics called the three-body problem. And I'll drop a YouTube video for you to go and listen to and watch. A scientist actually fucking described this. I'm going to read you the definition of what the three-body problem is, and then I'm going to describe to you in my human terms what the fuck that means. In physics, specifically classical mechanics, the three-body problem is to take the initial positions and velocities of 3-point masses that orbit each other in space and calculate their subsequent trajectories using Newton's laws of motion and Newton's law of universal gravitation. So the problem lies in, for instance, in this specific instance, what they were doing is they were trying to calculate in 500 million years what orbits all of the planets in our solar system are going to be doing. And when they moved, I think it was Mercury by like a millimeter in each of these scenarios, like shit hit the fucking fan in about 10% of the simulations they were running. Because they're basically, when there are too many moving pieces, it is too difficult to predict what the outcome is going to be. Versus when there are only one or two masses, in this instance planets, orbiting around the sun, being the gravitational pull in this instance, they can calculate that. It's pretty well, the calculations and the rules are pretty robust, and they can have a pretty good estimation or approximation at the specific result that's going to happen. And when it comes to your manifestations, you need to remember you are abiding by the 3D principles and the 3D laws within this realm. And every time you are bringing your 3 children into it, and your partner into it, and your mother into it, and your home into it, and the city that you live into it, and all of these moving pieces, when you are trying to people please and trying to create a manifestation and trying to create a dream life, not just for yourself, but for everybody around you, it is super difficult for you to calculate what the outcome might be. And this is deeply rooted in your inability to actually hold a frequency for yourself. This is deeply rooted in your not trust that you living out your highest timeline and you receiving your desires and your manifestations and the things that your authority is leading you towards won't mean that the people around you will also benefit. This is conditioning, this is trauma, this is coding that you getting what you want means other people get hurt, or other people get abandoned, or other people get left behind, or other people make you the villain, or that you'll be ostracized. All of these are different flavors of the same coin, of you not living out your purest and highest timeline when it comes to your codex, when it comes to your evolution, when it comes to your authority, when it comes to you elevating past the series of complicated situations that you are in right now. And that is the reason why the manifestation process and the manifestation gurus say to go inside, to drown out the noise, to do the meditations, right? To do the chakra clearing meditations, to do the journaling, to brain dump, to actually focus in on yourself and tap into the God consciousness, tap into your higher self frequency and drown out every other noise, or like take a digital detox. The reason why the advice is to do that is so that you get rid of all of these extra bodies in this calculation, in this manifestation world that you are creating within this 3D world. By you focusing on yourself, you get to emit the problems that happen in the three-bodied problem, right? In the three-bodied calculation of this world, of this 3D matrix. It's also the solstice portal right now. For us here in the Southern Hemisphere, it is the summer solstice, so it's where the most light is coming in. And Joel and I, my son, had a really interesting conversation today around eyeballs and photons with Clara actually as well. It was so fucking cool. And I was like, oh my God, this needs to be in this podcast because this is the coolest fucking conversation. So I was listening to a podcast with she's a mathematician, actually someone, I'll also link that actually because it was a really fucking good podcast. And one of the things she was describing in it, because she's doing a thesis in like astro, I think I thought she was an astrophysicist, but she's actually a mathematician, but she works in the aerospace, but doesn't matter. Anyway, anywho, I'll drop the link if you want to go and follow her and listen to this specific podcast. But one of the things she was mentioning on the podcast was that photons, so the light, right, from our sun, the photons are bumping around inside the star, and then eventually they leave. So they're created inside the sun, right? And they leave and they travel to Earth, and that's the light that we receive, these photons. And these photons bounce off different things, and that's how then they go into our eyeballs. But when they go into our eyeballs, they never leave. They then get turned into electrons, and then the electrons go through the neural pathway to our brain, and then our brain, deciphers what that information means. And when I described that to Joel, he said, oh, so our eyes are like black holes. And I was like, shivers down my spine, because ultimately what I believe in this instance of me is that we are fragments of God. And this is a truth. And if it doesn't resonate with you, anything that I say, in fact, ever, if it does not resonate with you, just put it in the bin. That's fine. If it doesn't resonate with you, put it in the bin. If it inspires you, that's great. But use your authority. Filter it through your codex. You do not have to agree with everything that I share. Or anything that I share, actually. I don't mind. It's okay. I won't be offended if you don't agree with anything that I think. But one of the things that I think is that we're all fragments of God living out an experience. And we are sending information back to God, or back to our higher selves, or back to the aliens, or to the universe, or whatever the fucking creator is. I'm not even 100% sure what that is, but whatever. Or just the collective consciousness. We are sending information back based on our dualistic experience and actual 3D experience on this earth. And I found it super, and because we also know with consciousness, right, like the beginning is the end. And like a lot of people, which is another thing that I share about in Money Manifestation Mastery in one of the modules, but a lot of people think that manifestation is all about just raising your consciousness and like going to the 5D and but like go from 3D to 4D to 5D to 6D to 7D to 12, however many fucking there are. But actually, when you get to the end, say it's 12 dimensions, and I know there's a great topic of debate as to how many fucking dimensions there are, but whatever. When you get to 12, it loops back around. It's like a toroidal field, right? Where it loops back around and goes back to the first dimension. One of the things my guide said to me very early on was, wouldn't it just be quicker for you to just go from the 3D down to the 2D down to the 1D and then from the 1D to the 12D? And I was like, well, that sounds like a fucking hack I could get behind. Rather than climbing the ladder all the way to the fucking top, if I can do it quicker. And it's just really interesting because, you know, I'm an earth sign. My husband is an earth sign. I have a stellium in Capricorn. Like, my astrology is so predominantly earth. I was raised by earth mama. Like, my BFF sister is also an earth sign. I am just so here for the earth and for the duality and for the denseness and for the joy and for the pleasure and for the body and for the expression and for the plants. Oh my God. And the sun on your face and everything. And I just think it's entirely crazy that everyone wants to like leave their bodies, you know, and they want to like not be here anymore, and they want to meditate the world away or their problems away, when actually I also know there's a lot of power and a lot of truth in accepting this 3D, loving this 3D, being so grounded in this 3D and going down to the 2D and then down to the 1D and then looping back around, because it's so much fucking quicker. And also, you can't get to somewhere if you're just bypassing anything anyway, you know? So anyway, when Joel shared this with me, I was like, this is so fucking amazing, because it also represents what I know to be true in this current version of myself, knowing that we are receiving information and then it's going to the Godhead or going to the collective consciousness. Like the photon entering in through our eyeballs is then going to our brain. That's also a representation of what this matrix or this hologram or this life or however it might be, the correct descriptor may be, whatever the correct descriptor might be, it's also a representation of that. And I fucking love having these conversations with my children. And it's something else that I possibly will bring onto the podcast a little more, is, I guess, just perspectives and conversations that we have with our children and how they are our greatest teachers. And I do teach my children things, but they teach me far more than I could ever teach them. And I love that about parenting. It is so fucking amazing and the biggest blessing. And so while you're having this experiment, while you are here in this human meat suit, while you are here in this portal between, you know, whether it's on the solstice or whether it's or some other time where you're reevaluating and creating manifestations, I would like you, or I give you an invitation to be fully expressive and to be unequivocally in alignment with what you desire, without the strangling of people pleasing, without the strangling of the fear of who might get left behind, or I'll do it this specific way because my partner will then like it more, or okay, it needs to be 5 times the amount of money so my partner can get what he wants at the same time so that he's not triggered by my success, or whatever it is. I want you to look at the frequencies. Oh my gosh, that was 33 and 33 as I looked at my screen that I was recording. That's great. Which it will be less by the time this is edited down, because there has been some fuckery in the middle of me bambling of my words, which you're not going to hear later on. Will this even be in the podcast, or would my team have cut it out? Let's fucking see. You'll have to let me know if you share this on while we're in that topic. I would love if you took a screenshot of this podcast episode and shared it on your stories and tag me either at Angharad Sage on Instagram or Facebook. Angharad Sage has an extra E on Facebook, or your Galactic Guide. I think that's only on Instagram, not Facebook. And we will reshare, and I would love to see that you were listening to this and that it made an impact for you, because 2025 is a fucking hell of a year for our energy. There's been a lot of death portals and a lot of cycles that have ended. And by the way, speaking of death portals as well, if you haven't quite figured out how to close a death portal, or you've kind of been stuck with one for a couple of years, or you've kind of just, it's really put you through the ringer. I know, like Pluto Capricorn, it's been a shitstorm, right, for 16 years. And as I just shared, I fucking understand. I fucking get it. You know, I get it. All the cardinal signs in general. I get it. It's been a lot. I created a training called Tone. It's a free masterclass, which is still currently free. It will not be free at some point. I haven't had the urge to change it yet. So the specials that were on the masterclass have expired. However, that was released a couple of weeks ago. So I'll put a link in this description as well for you to go and get that training. You sign up to, you basically enter your details and you'll get emailed the instant replay link. It's fucking powerful because the death portals have been activating us. We've been gathering our energy sources. I believe that death portals are here to create opportunities for us to not pick up the fucks again. And by not picking up the fucks, we actually reclaim more of our power, and we get to be self-sustaining ecosystems. And we get to be, oh, my ears are ringing so intensely right now. Thank you, guides. We get to be so intensely in our power. And that is the reason why we go through the death portals, despite their pain and despite the isolation. They are preparing us for our outer expansion. And so what I've been showing time and time again is that 2025 is, there is so much coming for your outer expansion, and for our mission. And so if you feel like there's a death portal that you haven't quite tied up yet, go and watch Tone. Go and register for Tone. Tone is called, it's the Tone Masterclass, the Precipitation of Your Spoken Code, and will absolutely amplify your ability to share, your ability to reclaim, and your ability to realign to your new mission, given that you get to honor everything that you have been through and everything that the death portal has taught you and is still trying to teach you. Basically, the masterclass Tone will help you extract the last fragments there for you to be fully activated and step into what it is that you're meant to in 2025. Any fucking who. So 2025 is, I feel like I'm doing a weather report. There's going to be sunny and clouds and a storm on the 29th of July. Oh, that's fucking great. But 2025, there is going to be a lot of reclamation in the online space. You're going to see that. Maybe I'll do I might do a separate episode for what I see in my predictions for 2025, but there's going to be a lot of reclamation. There's going to be a lot of rebranding and resharing your voice in a way that is honoring what you have been through, while also just doing the crazy, scary shit that you haven't had the capacity for, and it wasn't the right time to do during the death portal anyway. Just like what I'm doing right here, like I shared at the very beginning of this podcast, that this feels edgy to me and feels a bit scary based on it's just out of my comfort zone. It's simply just outside of my comfort zone. There's elements of this that's outside of my comfort zone, and that's okay. That's a good fucking thing. That's not a bad thing. Doesn't mean I'm failing. You've probably got a shitload of value from this. So here the fuck, let me be the proof to your little human that being outside your comfort zone is the best fucking thing for the people that you're here to make an impact for. To round out this episode, I invite you to go and study the science information that I have linked below, to go and register for Tone, the masterclass, to close out any death portals and be activated for 2025. And finally, to actually bring a sense of individuality and sovereignty into your manifestations. Because while you are not being sovereign, there are so many moving pieces, and it is absolutely going to cockblock your manifestation precipitation and process of it landing in this 3D world for two reasons. Firstly, because you're people pleasing, and by default, when it's messy, you don't want to impact other people, so therefore you're not going to precipitate it. But secondly, also, for your human to try and calculate, you are also bound by this 3D world and this 3-bodied problem. And so you are just an organic human being having a soul's experience, but you are an organic being living by the physical rules of this plane. And so when you are involving too many moving pieces, you are cock blocking your manifestations because you simply cannot calculate how that's going to end up. You instead need to lean into your heart portal, lean into your trust of yourself, lean into your authority. Look back on times where you did the weird, crazy, amazing things, or you were really in a sovereign era, and how that impacted yourself, and then how that then impacted and reverberated throughout space and time for the people around you, and how fucking epic that turned out, right? Bring that energy into the now. This is Angharad Sage, and you have listened to the Your Galactic Guide podcast.